We're back. New podcast with my friend Payam here. He is a clinical nutritional specialist. I've had you on the pod before, and we got to talk about, microplastics, hair loss, things of that nature. We have really good conversations when you come on the pod, so you're back. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you for pulling up.
Yeah, no, of course. We did talk about a pretty wide range of things last time. Probably even more than just those. It was kind of all over the place, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's good. It's good because, I feel like we need to have those conversations about health, and, you're probably the most qualified person I know to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to do my due diligence to the people, spread some good, healthy knowledge.
Of course.
None of the, drama and bullshit. Some other podcasts I've recorded
that won't
have
be part
covered,
of,
you know what I'm saying?
That won't be part of this one. Anytime I talk about anything nutrition and science-based, I think anybody who does, including myself, should always discuss it in the most evidence-based manner, based off the research, based off of, the biology and the physiology, and not in a way that this is not me giving my, opinion about what's better as much as it is using my experience to use clinical opinion and kind of just conveying some of the research that's out there, because there's so much research coming out nowadays, and some of it I think is very relevant and practical for people to know, especially around supplementation nowadays.
Yeah. What have you been up to the last time? It's been a year.
Yeah, it's been a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
What have you been doing for work and stuff like that? Have you guys been
So I've been working mostly, so in the last year, although I've had individual clients with clinical nutrition, I've also been working in kind of interesting area, unrelated directly to nutrition, but behavioral intervention. So crisis intervention, individuals who essentially, I work for an organization where if somebody is, having a suicidal episode, schizophrenic, depressed or whatever, either they can call us, their psychiatrist calls, and what we do is we'll go to them. We actually do mobile crisis response, and we'll go to them and we'll make sure that, we can give them the behavioral support they need. We'll do, psychological evaluations or behavioral evaluations, and we'll look at them and see, does this need to get escalated? Does this person need to be, given a different type of support? Are they at risk of suicide? Interestingly enough, there's a lot that you can relate to things to nutrition. A lot of times when I speak to these people, when they haven't taken care of themselves in a long time and, they're in mental behavioral crisis, their diet and their exercise, but their diet more so is the first thing to go. And that lasts months and months. And, although depression is kind of its own thing, psychological challenges are their own thing in some way, the mind is a reflection of the brain. The brain is a reflection of your neurochemistry, and that's affected by your nutrition. It's very common that I wish that sometimes when I'm seeing a client or a patient who is going through something very deeply emotional and has some psychiatric symptoms as a result, that I wish I could get them more connected to some nutritional resources, because it's not going to fix it on its own, but it's definitely one angle to attack depression and stress from. And that was actually something I want to talk about on this podcast with you, is some of these newer supplements that are out. I think nowadays there's a lot of pharmaceutical ways to address anxiety and depression. And, if the physician or the medical provider thinks that's the best way, then that's sometimes worth trying. But there's also a lot of other avenues.
So you're basically saying that like a poor nutrition can lead to depression or amplify depression and mental health, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I would say, as far as my view on this is, I think it can lead to it in some way, but it can at least take somebody who's a predisposition and bring out that susceptibility, right? Some people have a genetic predisposition towards depression more than others. Some people are just more sensitive souls. Some people's mind is, different than others. And if you take somebody who might be having a tough few months, few years, and you make their nutrition poor as well, it says, as you said, it amplifies it, magnifies it, and makes it so that now, rather than this underlying low feeling, well, now your body's not doing well, your energy levels are low. And I don't know if you've ever had really low energy levels for weeks or days, but that feeling in itself mimics depression in some ways.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been there when I've been deficient in some vitamins.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to get up, you're sleepy, you're just kind of lethargic, kind of tired.
Yeah.
So you said you guys have been dealing with supplements. Are supplements good?
Supplements can be good. That's something that I've spoken with, aside from the behavioral side, a lot of my individual nutritional clients. Supplements are a tool, and there's a lot of them out there because they're not regulated. The problem is, unlike drugs who have to go through the FDA, supplements, you can just kind of open up a supplement company with maybe 10, 20K nowadays. The supplements that are effective are the ones that are, from brands that are reputable and that are third-party lab tested. And some supplements that are out there will you'll eat them, they'll go in and right out, you'll pee them right out. But generally speaking, a multivitamin, something with, vitamin D, vitamin C, B complex, very effective for you because most people don't get it from their food enough. And if they do, it's inconsistent. And there's some other supplements which have newly been introduced maybe the last 5 to 10 years, although we've been researching them for decades. And they're gaining a lot of traction. And I think they're really interesting for mood stabilization and things like that.
So that you find them beneficial? You believe in them?
Very much so, yeah.
Because a lot of supplements can be kind of faddish, right?
Very much so as well, yeah.
So what's the new stuff that people should look out for? So
yeah, there's some things that a lot of people may have already heard of them, although there's a lot of different forms of them. There's two things that come to mind are ashwagandha and lion's mane. These are both supplements which are from ashwagandha is from a plant, and lion's mane is a mushroom actually. And when I say mushroom, I don't mean like psilocybin where it'll make you have a psychedelic trip or anything. Ashwagandha, for example, we know what cortisol is. You've heard like I get stressed out, my cortisol goes up, my adrenaline goes up. So there's times in a person's life, whether they're dealing with, a hard relationship or work-life balance or school's tough, whatever's tough, your cortisol levels can be chronically high for like weeks to months on end. And what that causes is, it can alter your thinking, it can alter your mood, it can make your energy levels feel very, very erratic, highs and lows. Interfere with sleep, which in itself is kind of this perpetual spiral of now, your sleep's not good, now your diet's not good, now you don't sleep well, now you're depressed, and since you're depressed, now you're not. It's a cycle. Ashwagandha is a very interesting compound. It has a few compounds in it in this plant that actually antagonizes cortisol. It lowers your cortisol back down to its normal baseline. And what they found in a lot of studies is it can do a few things. So first of all, it improves memory and sleep. And probably it's because it improves your sleep that then improves your memory, because that's where a lot of your memories are solidified, is in deep sleep.
What do you mean improve your sleep?
So yeah, that's so what
it helps you sleep or puts you to sleep?
It doesn't put you to sleep. No, it's not like a tranquilizer like, some of these prescription medications that will put you out. What it will do is, let's say, you're assuming you're not looking at the screen, you don't have light in your face, and you're not drinking caffeine before bed. People who have kind of worrying minds, what it helps is it helps you just kind of worry less. It doesn't get you high. It doesn't alter your consciousness. Again, it just brings down that cortisol and puts you in a physiological state where you can sleep if you want to. You can certainly stay up, right? It's a very subtle thing, but it allows you to sleep. And then once you sleep, the interesting thing is people who've been through these studies, and even clients and patients I've had who I've worked with directly have said that they stay asleep longer. They wake up less throughout the night, or if they do, it's for shorter periods of time, and then waking up more refreshed. That's what a lot of the research shows too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what is this called?
Ashwagandha.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you been taking this?
I have taken it. Yeah, I've taken it quite a few times, probably 6-7 times throughout the last year. A few times just to try and see, how does this make me feel? And other times when it's like, if you have a lot of work and other things, I've taken it and it's quite effective. I will say that it's not just good for, helping you sleep and mood, but it has a lot of other benefits to you as well, even as far as what they found is exercise performance. The caveat to that being is you don't want to take it before you go and work out, because it's not pre-work, because it brings your cortisol down, and that'll be harder to wake you up in the gym. But after your workout, when you want your body to go back down to that baseline physiological state where you can go into that recovery mode, it can help kind of place you into that.
Wow.
So it's really nice. There is a specific strain of it, though, that I want to mention. It's called KSM 66, I believe. There's a lot of strains of this, and the most clinically researched one is that KSM 66 brand. You can buy it online on Amazon. There's tons of brands that are doing it now.
And they're selling it as a supplement, like what, a pill or?
There's multiple forms. Yeah, there's a pill. There is also a little, like a gummy gel that you can take as well.
And you take it, what, every day?
You can. I would say, as far as what they say to do when you're initially starting, until you know how it affects you, you should probably exercise some caution. Not that it's going to do anything bad to you, but some people can get a little bit too tired. Some people, if they're on, for example, if you're on some other medications, it's good to speak to your medical provider and make sure that this is not going to interact with it in any way. But there's no danger in taking it more than less that we know of. But taking it for maybe a few weeks is probably the first place to start.
So right now, that's what you're recommending to client or patients?
I have some clients that I recommend that to. I've had friends that I've given that to, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is it like inexpensive?
No. No, it's incredibly inexpensive. You can get probably a bottle of 2 months worth, 60 pills worth for about like $25. And here's the thing is you don't really need to take it every day. It's not like that. You can take it as needed, like once a week if you're a little bit stressed. Probably best to take on an empty stomach so it absorbs well. But
really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So are other people trying to, make this supplement and they're kind of cutting corners and stuff like that? Like you mentioned, people aren't getting it third party tested and stuff like that. Like, is that important to look for when trying to get this supplement too?
It is, because although it's kind of hard to mess up ashwagandha, there are, like I said, different strains, and also the way they process it matters. They can, denature it, they can, burn it up. You can also get a supplement which is, pretty good, but then they put so many other preservatives in it that can just upset your stomach and that can cause issues in itself. So if you're going to take something regularly, I recommend a brand that's reputable, and sometimes that just comes down to looking for what they call a GMP, good manufacturing practice seal on the bottle. that can give you some layer of certainty.
And those seals, they actually mean something?
They do, yeah. What they do is they go out to the manufacturing facility and they do checks. They make sure that everything's up to standard, and they check the purity of the supplements to say, hey, if you're saying that this is 1,000 IU vitamin D, for example, is it really? Or do you have a bunch of fish oil in here or olive oil? And there's been brands that have been caught doing that, by the way. They'll say, hey, this is 1,000 milligrams of omega-3. And then somebody will come and test it and be like, this is actually showing up as, grapeseed oil, or even worse, a lot of your olive oil is rancid because it's been sitting in the stockroom for 8 months before you sold it. So it keeps the quality and the purity at a certain standard where, it's fit for us to take.
Wow. And who are the kind of people who should be looking for this supplement? Like what? Realistically
speaking, with the world we live in nowadays and the level of stress that the average person has, I think everybody needs to kind of determine for themselves, in conjunction with their healthcare provider, of course, if they feel that it's something good to integrate into their lives. But realistically, I don't think that there's anybody who wouldn't benefit from it unless, everything's great, in which case, treat it like a tool. If you don't need it, don't use it. But if you are finding that you are, needing an extra thing to take the edge off, I know plenty of people who smoke cigarettes, for example. They don't even like it. They just do it because it de-stresses them. And it's addictive in its nature as well. But, ashwagandha, to my knowledge and to the body of research that we have, there's no indication that it's addictive at all. So it can be a stand-in for some other things, again, if it's used responsibly.
Yeah. Is it gaining in popularity?
It is, yeah. It's starting to be sold at Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, a lot of places, and for good reason.
Wow, I got to check it out. I got to pick some up. Wow, that's really interesting. So what are some things that people are claiming to be, beneficial that aren't? Any items that's on the market right now?
Yeah, not so much with ashwagandha, because ashwagandha, ashwagandha got really good popular and evidence-based traction, meaning as soon as it hit the market or became more popular, there was a lot of people who were qualified to say what it did, and those were the ones who were talking, those were the ones people listened to. So everything we seem to know about ashwagandha aligns with the research very well. But there are some other things on the market. We've all seen some certain pre-workout supplements. We've seen certain, I guess I should call out testosterone boosters, not to call it a specific brand, but things like that, which at the very least, they're probably wasting your money. And at the very most, they might be doing some long-term damage to your kidney, your liver, and other systemic areas of your body that you may not be aware of. I have come across kind of a shockingly high number of new supplement brands coming out nowadays. And I think the biggest thing to look for is, buzzwords. When they say, this'll increase your testosterone 1,000%. It's like, that doesn't even sound like a good thing to me. That's a little scary sounding if it could do that, but it sounds too good to be true. There's a lot of even, sleep meds that combine things like melatonin and GABA and ashwagandha and L-theanine. and they take basically every supplement that can make you sleep, and they put together. And the outcome of that is, does it help you sleep? Yes. But then you wake up the next day groggy, and I have known friends and I've seen clients who've taken these, and they sleep, but then they don't know why they're groggy for weeks and months on end, and then their performance suffers. So I think there is a lot of hype around some of these new supplements coming out, and I would encourage people to make sure that if they're taking a supplement, maybe don't always combine them. If you see a pill that has, with the exception of a multivitamin, of course, if you see a pill that has multiple supplements in it for sleep, for example, look at each one. So, do I really need 4 sleep supplements in one pill, or can I just take melatonin?
Hold on, let me check to make sure this is recording, but I got some more questions.
Sure. I'm assuming that part got cut out.
Nah, yeah, we'll cut that out. But okay, wow. So, what's more important, or organize these in matters of importance for me?
Sure.
Nutrition, sleep, exercise.
Oh boy. So you want me to give like a hierarchy?
Yeah,
I would have to
prioritize.
Yeah. Sure. I would have to say, I want to put 2 of them in the same category. Most medical providers will say probably your sleep is the most important thing, but you could say that's interchangeable nutrition. I would say your sleep and your nutrition is definitely in line with one another. If you get the best nutrition in the world and you're not sleeping, your body will not put those compounds to the best use, and your stress levels, cortisol levels will be chronically high, and your body will break down slowly. If you get enough sleep but you don't have good nutrition, then your body, I've seen individuals who don't have the best nutrition. What happens is they need too little sleep or way too much sleep. So the things you eat throughout the day are kind of laying the blocks. And if you think about building a wall or a house, it's like, your nutrition is the building blocks, and then the sleep is the cement that puts it together. Because in your sleep is when your body releases a lot of growth hormone factors and things like that. And then exercise is very important, but it's probably second to those other 2.
How many hours per night should people be getting asleep?
Yeah, that's very widely determined on the individual. Generally speaking, I've never seen anybody, or rarely seen anybody, get less than 6 to 7 hours of sleep and be well rested. There are some people who have this very interesting genetic mutation, and this is a very few people, so I hope not everybody thinks this is them, but some people can actually get 5 hours of sleep and have no negative effects. It's a very, very rare thing, though.
Yeah. Like, for example, I think of Elon Musk. I heard he doesn't sleep a lot. He gets like 5-6 hours a day, and I was just curious if that even affects him, or like you were saying, it seems like it's case by case on the type of person.
It is case by case, but given that we're all obviously the same species and our genetic variation is not that much, chances are you need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I would say if you're getting, most medical providers and myself as well think that if you're getting much more than 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep every night, and there is such thing as sleep debt, for example. If you get 4 or 5 hours of sleep on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, on Saturday you might sleep 10 hours. That's okay. But if you're getting 10 hours of sleep consistently every night, chances are there's something on board that's not going well. And that might in itself be an indicator of a medical issue, and that would be a good thing to bring to a medical provider. But between 7 to 9 hours is best for most people. If Elon Musk is getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I don't know him. I haven't checked him up, but chances are there's a lot of caffeine involved there, and he's an individual in his own.
He's not human.
Level. Yeah,
he's an alien.
He can do quite a lot, and who knows? Who knows what that'll do to his health down the line? I think he's concerned more about the immediate business approach, and that's the sacrifices you make. But as far as the rest of us, if we want to make sure that we have longevity, if you speak to these people who are still alive from World War II, the 95, 100, 105-year-olds, they sleep and they talk about. They're like, I walk like 3-4 miles a day. I eat foods at home, and maybe some of them take a multivitamin, but that's even new for them because in their generation they barely even did that. And they're like, I sleep at the same time of night, and that's if I can bring that up, that's another interesting topic because there's a lot of new research that shows, interestingly enough, it's not just about how much you sleep, and not even about when you sleep necessarily, but sleeping around the same time every night.
Really?
Plus or minus half an hour to an hour. Yeah.
So just getting into that habit with your body, because I'm sure it goes through a process, and
it does, yeah. And there's a little window of time if you don't sleep on time where your body just doesn't go into REM sleep as easily. Your body has a few stages of sleep, about 4 of them if I remember correctly. And in order for your body to be able to seamlessly go from one to the other, release all the hormones and the growth factors that it needs to be able to do, let's say you go to sleep every night around 11. The one night you go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, you still get 8 hours of sleep, but you went to bed later. Your body is going to want to start doing certain metabolic processes around 11:30, which is what time it thinks that it can. Now you just didn't let it do it till 2. So you missed that window. So the consistency of the sleep schedule, and I'm guilty of this myself. I don't always do it, but in an ideal world,
Yeah, I mean, I've been on that recently, where I've just been going to sleep way too late, and it's just been kind of messing up the whole day. You know?
Yeah, you wake up groggy the next day. It's very pronounced.
But it's possible to oversleep or sleep too much?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Sleep debt is a thing, though.
So what do you mean by that? So like I could be 4 or 5 hours of sleep Monday through Thursday, and then I could catch up on that and get that back?
I did say that, yeah. So you can. That's not the best way to do it. It's not that you catch up. There's still some damage that gets done when you don't sleep enough because, you went through those days, your body was in a certain physiological state of stress. And the interesting thing is when you don't sleep enough, your body compensates because our bodies are very intelligent at doing that. You force your body to wake up. Sometimes we drink a little tea or coffee to assist, but your cortisol levels will go up. People who don't sleep well enough also have trouble with hunger signaling to our brain to tell us when we're full or our blood sugar is at a certain level. So we tend to overeat because our brain has trouble telling the difference between I'm tired from lack of sleep versus I'm tired from lack of food. So if I can't get sleep, I guess I'm doing food. So we overeat. On average, about 300 to 500 calories a day, they found people who are sleep deprived will eat more.
Wow.
Yeah. But can you catch up on your sleep? Yeah. Is that a good strategy? I would say not. But yes, your body does keep track to some extent. And if you're finding that, you're going through the week and you're doing, 6 hours of sleep a night, and then you need another 2-3 hours of sleep on the weekend, I think that's a good place to be patient with yourself and give yourself the opportunity to sleep in a little because your body really doesn't want to oversleep unless it's very sick. Meaning, in most ways, there's no such thing as oversleeping. There's a reason. Either you're oversleeping because, there's depression and anxiety or some kind of mood thing going on. Maybe you're sick. Some people with diabetes and chronic illnesses do that. Or you have sleep debt.
Wow. That's really interesting. I got a lot of sleep debt.
It's not just you.
So how is there any healthy ways to indulge in caffeine, or not indulge, but like have caffeine in your system? Because I'm one of those where it's like I'll wake up. I heard you don't want to drink caffeine within the first 30 minutes to hour waking up. You want to go outside. You just want to set your alarm, set your clock, I call it, get the sun in your eyes.
Yeah.
Because there's some sort of system in our body where the sun comes in, it releases some sort of chemical in our body to let us know, all right, the day has started. Let's get this process going.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very interesting and it's undeniable how intricately we are tied in with our environment. We've developed for millions of years to interact with our environment, and what's the biggest part of our environment is arguably it's the sun. It's what allows for all the trees and plants to grow, and it's also had an impact on our physiology evolutionarily. When we go outside in the morning and sunlight goes through the cornea, through the eyes, and acts on the brain through many different neurological pathways, it actually starts to raise your cortisol. You need a little bit of cortisol. Too much cortisol for too long, bad, but no cortisol, and you'll have trouble doing much. It kind of jumpstarts your clock. And our circadian rhythm is such that when sunlight enters our eyes, it, as you said, signals to us to be like, hey, okay, the day is ready. You are ready. Get up. Let's ramp up these hormones. Let's ramp up these enzymes. The interesting about caffeine is, again, it's a tool. And I really want to encourage, I tell myself this all the time. I tell my friends, I tell clients, I tell patients, and I want to encourage everybody to think of caffeine just, as a drug, not in a bad way, but just like a supplement. It's a tool. It can be used really amazingly, but there's a way to do it, I think. I would not have caffeine before 9:30 in the morning. Reason being is probably between 8 to 9:30 for most people is where cortisol goes up. If you drink caffeine before that, what you do is you antagonize the caffeine, meaning your body's all negative feedback. So if I drink caffeine, your body will think, well, I have this external source of stimulation. I don't need to stimulate myself. I don't need to have my cortisol levels. So it becomes dependent on this. And if you've ever seen somebody drink caffeine at like 7 a.m., 6 a.m., happens in the medical world all the time because, we're up at like 5 or 6. By the time noon comes and the caffeine's wearing off, our body hasn't been able to release the cortisol and hormones it needs. So there's nothing to keep us from crashing. And then people crash and they get tired. And then what do they need? Another cup. This, for example, I drink tea a lot. This is green tea. It's a lot of green tea. I like tea more because tea metabolizes a little bit slower. It doesn't give you that blood sugar spike or crash. And it has other antioxidant benefits, as does coffee. I would say everybody's different. Some people's bodies are very sensitive to caffeine, some people's less. But around 9:30 is probably the time, maybe even 10 if you want to push it, a.m. in the morning, to have some caffeine. And I would not down it all at once, because that is a very, very stimulatory environment for your body, especially oftentimes when people do that before they have any protein or carbohydrates in their system. And now your body's like, well, I'm being told to be super stimulated and active. I don't have the fuel for that. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to release a lot of hormones to release glucose from my liver, and then that puts you in a state. So, yeah.
Because caffeine, it doesn't give you energy. It just blocks your thyroid receptors, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
it doesn't give you energy.
Yeah, it just blocks you from thinking you're tired.
Yeah. In some ways, it can give you. I mean, so what energy really is the only place we get energy is from the food we take in and the way we release that. So you've heard of B complexes, B vitamins giving you energy. Those are actually more in line with the truth of giving you energy, because B vitamins serve as enzymes in your body to help break down food and release the energy from it. Caffeine can do an interesting thing, is that it acts on acetylcholine receptors, the thyroid receptors, and it can make it so that your body either has more stimulation or doesn't realize that it's as tired. And that can allow, in conjunction with the B vitamin, for you to have a lot of energy. But then this is why people who drink a lot of caffeine, don't take their vitamins, don't eat well, realize that they're constantly needing more caffeine and they're constantly more tired as the day goes.
Yeah, I mean, what's like the healthy range of caffeine intake on a daily basis? Because I mean, you got this Celsius has like near 180, 200 milligrams.
Yeah, those are strong.
Like the tea probably is lower on the spectrum.
It is lower, yeah. And as I said, it releases slower, and I sip on it over the course of like 2 hours so that I can control. I think of the way I like to think of these is like, think of you have like an IV drip. Would you want to shoot that thing into you all at once? No, you want it slow drip of caffeine. Celsius, I think, is a really nice product in some ways, but I'll tell you, for me, sometimes I'll drink a little bit of it as a pre-workout, but I will drink 1/5, maybe 1/6 the can. If I crack one of those guys open, it lasts me about a week, because I don't want to make my body too used to the caffeine, because I know I'll constantly need more. Yeah.
So is there like a number you could say on like
there's a range.
Okay, well, what's the range? 200 is out the range, right?
Yeah, 200 is, some people, I'll give you an example, I'll give you my example of, I have friends, or even my father, they can drink black coffee and go straight to bed. I always envy those people. But if I drink coffee after 4 or 5 p.m., I will have trouble sleeping. It depends on your liver enzymes. It depends on a lot of your overall physiology and your neurology. So everybody, again, has to advocate for and gauge themselves. But it can be as little as some people can only tolerate 20, 30 milligrams of caffeine, which is like a light tea. And some people can go up to 100, 200 milligrams. I would say, weight is a big factor. Your sex is a big factor. Men, just like men can generally handle a little bit more alcohol, they can handle a little bit more caffeine. But I do think we live in a chronically over-caffeinated society. And I know that caffeine is a really big cultural part, right? When we meet friends, we go out for coffee. When we do something at work, we grab
It's a
coffee.
stimulant, right? Yeah.
It's a stimulant, yeah. And it's a very addictive stimulant. And, that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, I would say if you're downing, I think caffeine becomes too much when, if you're honest with yourself, that you're downing it in the place of sleep and in the place of good nutrition. If you have, your multivitamin, your 8 hours of sleep, and you're eating your good nutrition and doing well as far as your hydration throughout the day, you probably don't need that second or third cup of coffee. If you're not doing those things, for each one of those things you take out, I can almost guarantee you they're putting a place of coffee in a place of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to, I kind of sip the Celsius slowly. Within like a couple hour period, because it is one of those things where it's like, you'll feel like jittery and amped up and wired.
Yeah, Celsius also has a lot of stuff in it.
A lot of bad stuff?
It's not bad. It's just, it's everything in chemistry is concentration dependent, meaning you can OD on water. There's such thing as water toxicity. You can OD on vitamin B complex. It's too much vitamins, the medical term is called hypervitaminosis. And it's happening nowadays because people are drinking like 2-3 Celsiuses in a day, plus their multivitamin, plus a 5-hour energy. And they just took like 10,000% of the B12 they need every day for the last month.
Wow.
And then, things start happening. It has a lot of B vitamins. So if you take that, I would say keep in mind that you probably don't need a multivitamin that day, or just remember that, keep track of how much vitamins you're taking in, because it's in a lot of stuff nowadays.
Oh, because there's vitamins in there.
There's vitamins.
That's what you're saying.
There's actually a derivative in there. I think it's ECEG. It's a derivative of green tea. And it's basically a compound which is pretty good for you. But again, if it's too much, even a good thing can be a bad thing.
Wow, that's interesting. So what are your guys' like red flags for the future? Like, what are we consuming too much of? Or like things we need to look out for that, might be quote unquote healthy, or people just aren't thinking about? Like, are there anything like that?
There's probably, I think there's a lot of evidence nowadays that shows that certain diets are much healthier than others, but for some reason there's a very vocal and strongly, adamant community around certain diet trends. And I find that these diets still hold a lot of traction in the public and the community. I think we are, for one thing, eating way too much meat. I'm not vegan by any means, although maybe I should be. As I get older, sometimes I think I should. We're probably eating too much meat, especially red meat. Now, chicken, fish, these can definitely be good in my opinion, and in most people in the nutrition and medical areas' opinion, in moderation, those are fine. But red meat, I regard as something to have scarcely and not too frequently.
And what's red meat? Like burgers, steaks, stuff like that?
Yeah, anything from cow, anything from goat, and even pork to that extent as well.
And it's not good for your system because...
There's a few reasons, and that's the problem. It's multifactorial. For one thing, there's very high in saturated fat. Now, some people might be like, well, a little bit of saturated fat is fine, and that's true. But if you're eating red meat multiple times a week, it's the type of saturated fat. It tends to, people tend to get more of it than they think. Likewise, we tend to eat much bigger portion sizes of red meat. If you're supposed to eat red meat, the amount that they recommend is about, the size of your palm. Nobody eats a burger that big, the size of a deck of cards. We're probably eating something 2-3 times bigger. We're probably doing it 3-4 times a week. So saturated fat is one concern, in addition to all the saturated fat we're taking from all the other areas. Another thing is that, I don't know if we always realize, is when we're eating the tissue of another mammal, and cows and goats are that, whereas chicken and fish are not, we're getting hormones from their bodies into ours. They might not even be injecting these cows with hormones, but the cow being alive requires it to have hormones. Same thing with milk. So we're getting a lot of hormones in those fats and in those tissues, and those act on our system.
From what they're eating? From
what they're eating, from what their own bodies produce. We're taking in bovine growth hormone. There's also a lot of estrogen in those things. I think it's funny, people worry about soy, but a burger has way more estrogen-inducing compounds, and that's animal estrogen, not plant phytoestrogens, which aren't even the same. And then, red meat is probably a good thing to cut down on a little, both for us and in the environment. I think people are also doing, people are taking a lot of, like I said, a lot of different kinds of supplements. And although I think a multivitamin and, sometimes a vitamin D or vitamin B complex can be good in moderation and when it's used properly, I see guys just downing very copious amounts of pre-workout. And, I had a friend recently who actually did that and started having an arrhythmia. His heart started palpating. He's 29.
What does that mean?
It means that, the regular bump, 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 bump of the heart became a bump, 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 bump. It started beating at the wrong rate and a ridiculously high speed. And, he had to go to the ER, and he ended up being fine because he was young. Do that too often, too long when you get older. It's not uncommon for people to damage their kidneys, damage their heart a little. These pre-workout supplements are not regulated.
So you're not messing with the Liver King. You ever heard of the Liver King?
Yeah, I have. I heard actually that,
he was roided up and off the juice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, the thing is, it's up to everybody's own prerogative what they want to do to their bodies. But, one look at the guy and you can tell this is not attainable through normal diet. I don't care how much protein you eat, but regardless of that, he eats raw meat. Right? That's the guy.
Yeah.
So for one thing, that's a pathological nightmare. Eating, we've all heard of mad cow disease. We've all heard of, all these other diseases that come from animals. The only way you keep these diseases in check from getting into us is to cook the meat thoroughly. Not cooking it thoroughly or eating it raw, you're chancing whatever that animal had, now you have. Also, even if you want to talk on the nutrition level alone and not even like talking about the damage it could do to you to get the diseases. Cooking meat helps you absorb it. Raw meat, we're not lions and tigers. We don't have the enzymes to break it down that well. So if you actually want to get the most bang for your buck when you eat that chicken breast or steak, you want to cook it thoroughly well.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've seen him just going, he's raw dogging everything.
Yeah.
He's eating liver raw. He's eating, bull testicles. He's,
Yeah, I've seen those on camera. I think people do this sometimes because, again, there's notoriety, there's shock value. And in this day and age, you can do that. And people will look at it just because it's new. And I think he probably knew that doing these things that nobody else has done. I don't know if he knew what kind of damage he's doing to his body. And again, maybe people aren't always concerned. And this is what we see in athletes a lot. And I think it's important to know the difference between somebody who's an athlete who, if you see some people who are highly ultra athletic by their 40s or 50s, they can't do it anymore. There's like the Ronnie Colemans and things like that. They are ultra lifters, but, quadruple bypass later, heart surgery here and there. Is it worth it? The nutrition that I discuss is the kind that's physiologically in line with what our bodies need to live healthy and long, so that when you're 60 years old, you can play with your grandkids, so that when you're 70, you can remember what it was like to be 40.
Wow, that's interesting. So wait, you mentioned something about possibly you being vegan or going vegan.
I would consider it. Yeah.
Is there nutritional deficiencies in being vegan?
Is it possible? Yes. I would say, me personally, I don't know if I would ever go fully, although vegetarian is probably a good balance for me, because then you can have egg whites and yogurt, but you can cut out some of the meat. I eat a lot of chicken. I eat a lot of fish. But if one day I found that I need to do that for my health, and if the body of evidence that's growing in research shows that it's as effective as it currently shows, and it does show the vegan diet can be very good, I may choose to do that, and I may recommend it to patients or clients. Can you get deficiencies with veganism? Yes, you can. But generally, if you do it right, it's very easy to avoid those. The main only deficiency you'll probably ever get is B12. And that's a very easy thing. There's B12 in Celsius, there's B12 from any vitamin, and you can even get a B12 shot, and it'll last, months. So the benefits, higher free testosterone levels, if you hypertrophy is when you go to the gym, you lift. People who are vegan tend to have higher hypertrophy in nitric oxide that makes their vessels expand better, which also means lower blood pressure. Eating a high amount of animal tissue, animal meat, especially red meat, is correlated and even causative of early Alzheimer's dementia. So if you eat less meat, it stands to the reason that you may be protecting your brain and your personality as a result.
Wow. That's crazy. Let me ask you this. Is broccoli real? Is broccoli like a real food?
Yeah.
I heard a myth that it was just like, it's a made up, like in a lab type of thing.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no. So broccoli, it's bread, right? But it's kind of like the whole GMO argument. No, broccoli is definitely real. There is a lot of plants nowadays that we've taken from what they are in nature and brought out a certain trait. But that's not a bad thing. Farmers have been doing that for tens of thousands of years. And they've done it with some plants that are like wheat. I don't know if that's something everybody can tolerate, but broccoli, not only is it real, but it's real good for you. There, again, I'll call back to the research always rather than my just own opinion. There has been numerous large, well-designed double-blind studies, which is kind of the gold standard, that shows that eating broccoli 2 to 3 times a week, just a handful, you don't have to down a whole bag, 2 or 3 times a week reduces the risk of colorectal cancer by about 30 to 40%. There is no drug on the market that can reduce your risk of colorectal cancer by 30, 40%.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that last time we sat down, and I started meal prepping broccoli, and I eat broccoli every day. And then I've had a friend of mine tell me that it was fake and it was made in a lab. So I was just like, yo, what is going on? What is real?
Yeah. I think that's kind of people hear certain things, and well-intending people. And I think it's kind of like that, analogy where if there's a line of people and somebody says something to the person at the top of the line, by the time it gets to the back of the line, it's a whole different message.
Yeah.
It's definitely real. It's altered slightly, but at this point, that's not a bad thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So broccoli is one of those ones that helps.
Yeah.
Berries in the morning.
Berries in the morning are great. Yeah. Even after a workout as well. After a workout, you have a lot of free radical. You have a lot of stress in your system, and they found that just taking a handful of berries in your pre-workout, in your protein shake, helps kind of bring your antioxidant levels back up and your kind of your oxidization levels back down.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. What is your morning ritual?
My morning ritual. On the days I have it ideally. So I do a little bit of intermittent fasting sometimes.
Oh.
Yeah. I've done that for quite a long time. It tends to work with my body and, my schedule. So let's say I stop eating at 10 p.m. It can be 9, 10, 11. Let's say 10 for a nice round number. I might not eat again till about 10 a.m. or even 12, push it to about 12 to 14 hours. Then, in the very morning, I'll have some tea. I might take a multivitamin. Sometimes it's hard to take down an empty stomach. Everybody's tried it for themselves. But then my first meal, I'll try to have something with a good amount of protein, at least 15 to 20 grams of protein. I'll try to put something with a good number of colored foods in it, like berries. Or if I go straight to like chicken, I'll have chicken, I'll have broccoli, I'll have brown rice, things like that.
Is brown rice healthier than white rice? I heard that was a myth.
It's different than brown and white rice. I wouldn't say either of them are unhealthy. I think white rice gets an unfair, really bad rap because
it's like bleached and it's artificial.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
They removed the psyllium husk from, or the husk from the brown rice and made it white. And it doesn't have fiber, so it doesn't have that ability to slowly metabolize. It does hit your body with a big sugar spike, and that is true. But an easy way to fix that is just if you ever go to there's examples like Panda Express, right? You can get white rice there. If you mix a bunch of veggies, like broccoli in there, you mix the chicken in there, and you're eating it all together, now it's not going to be a bunch of white rice in your system because you're slowing the absorption. The problem happens when you eat a mound of white rice. Brown rice is going to take a little bit harder to eat and slower to eat because it's got more fiber. Yeah.
So would you recommend one over the other?
I actually, if I have to be really picky about it, I would say if you can, and this is a pain to do, but mix them.
Mix them,
yeah. Now you're getting a little bit of fiber, you're slowing the absorption, digestion of one, but ultimately, I think as long as you're eating, it's all the other things on your plate, right? As long as you're eating, some veggies, lean proteins, I would say if you like white rice, do white rice. There is a concern that brown rice has a little bit of arsenic in it. If you're eating it every single day for months and that's literally all you're eating, and maybe you're a susceptible population, that maybe is not the best thing, but a lot of cultures subsist on brown and white rice for their whole lives.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the smallest problems in our nutrition, I would say. I won't worry about it too much personally.
Yeah, so what are some common problems you're seeing with your patients and, kind of like regular things that are fundamental, like same across the board where it's just like, wow, this is happening a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any of those?
Yeah, there are some reoccurring themes. Off the top of my head, I think one of the biggest ones is, and this is not like a biological thing, but it's a behavioral thing, is there's a lot of conflicting diets. And you have people who try one diet, then another, and they're putting their bodies through these different chemical states each time they do that. For 2-3 months, they eat like a high red meat diet. For another few months, they do a keto diet. For another few months, they do all fruit diet. And your body through all this time is going through all these different phases, and it can put a lot of stress on you. I do think that I've seen a lot of people taking either way too many vitamin supplements or none at all. I tend to find there aren't so many people who are like, yeah, I take a multivitamin in the morning and sometimes I take vitamin D. It's like, good for you. That's great. But I do see people relying way too heavily on supplements sometimes, or not at all on any multivitamin. There's this kind of line of thought in some patients I've seen where they're like, well, I want everything natural. I don't want to take a pill. It's like, I understand the appeal to nature argument, but in nature, right, we would live to the ripe old age of 35. So giving ourselves some additional nutrients on board and minerals on board doesn't hurt you. Yeah.
What do you, or how often do you eat out?
3-4 times a week, depending, usually just for lunch. But as far as like eat out like a whole meal, maybe once a week.
And what kind of places are you eating out at?
So sometimes, if I don't have time for lunch, I will run to Whole Foods, and I'm not endorsing Whole Foods by any means, but just for my own perspective, they have their hot food bar. Yeah. And I can get some chicken, some rice, I can get some some beans and veggies, and do it the same way I would cook it at home. So there's a convenience there. Once in a while, I will actually, I mentioned Panda Express, again, not endorsing them, but I'll go there, and that turns a lot of heads. So like, that's not healthy. It's like, well, if I get grilled chicken, rice and veggies, I can do that.
Yeah, because what makes food unhealthy like that? Is the processing?
The processing for sure. Too much sodium, which is usually found in the sauces.
Okay.
Probably over-nutrification. So another thing that makes food unhealthy, so to speak, is, how we prepare it. Are we grilling it or are we frying it? Does it have a bunch of breaded, to get to the chicken, the orange chicken, for example, do you have to go through, an inch of deep fried bread with sugar in it? Because that's not really chicken. That's candy at that point, as far as your body's concerned.
So you're not ordering the orange chicken?
I'm not ordering it. It
Panda.
smells good.
It's the best
No,
thing,
I'm
man.
not ordering it too much though. There is one thing I want to mention that's off this topic, and to go back to the ashwagandha one. There is some really interesting research around something called lion's mane, which is it's a mushroom. And this mushroom is not like, psilocybin where it's psychedelic or gets you high. But a lot of the interesting research, and I've seen this with people, I've taken it myself. You can buy it on Amazon, Whole Foods. It's completely legal. Is that it's very good for memory maintenance. There's an area of your brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus deals with many things, but amongst those is memory writing and memory recall. So we basically take in memories and we kind of transcribe them. And then, 4 weeks later, you need to remember that memory. You'll find that when you're younger and your brain is functioning more optimally, it's easier to recall. Whereas if you're more elderly or if you're somebody who drinks a lot and doesn't treat your body that well, it's like you can memorize it, but now recalling it is a problem. What they found is this lion's mane mushroom, basically when you take it regularly in mice, and mice aren't us obviously, but their brain structure is actually very similar. It can help them solve mazes quicker. It helps them with being able to recognize novel stimuli from old stimuli, meaning they'll put a mouse in a cage and they'll show it a shape. Now the mice are very curious. They'll go up to anything that's new, which means if they don't go up to something that they've seen before, it's because they remember it. So they'll show them a shape. Mice will go up to it and they'll examine this shape. Okay, cool. Now it's memorized this shape. It won't be interested in that shape again if it sees it the next time. A month later, they'll put a bunch of shapes in there. And they'll see which ones will the mouse go up to. And the mice will almost always go up to the new shapes, which means it knows to ignore the old stimuli, the old shapes. It remembers those old shapes. And these are mice that were on this lion's mane supplement in their water and food. What that means and translates to for human beings potentially, and there's always that potentially, is that it can potentially prevent or avoid Alzheimer's degradation, maintain brain neuronal, brain density, the cells. And in that area, the hippocampus that deals with memory writing and memory recall, it can help with memory. It can help with sleep.
Wow. Are you taking this?
I have taken it, yeah, to try it.
Is it still kind of new?
Not in this culture, in this part of the country, Western, yes. But it's been in a lot of other countries, European countries, India, Japan for decades. And the documentation is well formed that it's effective.
And this would mostly benefit memory,
sleep, and also your ability to just kind of gracefully age your brain. There is, again, a lot of really good evidence that shows that doctors in other countries, even some here, are starting to tell people who have a predisposition to Alzheimer's, like, hey, your mother has Alzheimer's, maybe you should put this as part of your daily multivitamin regimen. Taking it every day, seeing how it does for you, and they find that, again, it takes months to decades, but it might help. There's a thing called neuronal growth factor. Helps your brain regenerate. We tend to think that our brain only grows till 25, 30, but neuroplasticity goes on into your 60s and 70s even, which is amazing. And what they found is when you take this supplement, it increases those growth factors, which helps your brain actually regenerate. So you're losing brain cells, but now you can lose them slower. And,
interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking, because look, I smoke a lot of weed sometimes, and I'm losing brain cells doing that, correct?
It depends on how much, but
Let's say
probably.
it's bad. It's not good for your memory, stuff like that. So this could kind of help it.
It could help a little. I wouldn't say that
It's not gonna
balance it out completely.
Yeah. And where can I find this stuff?
Literally everywhere nowadays. You can get it on Amazon. I would say you can get it on Amazon. There's many different sellers.
And it's called lion's mane?
Lion's mane, yeah. And the important thing is, again, make sure that it's third-party lab tested. They'll say it on the bottle. And you also want to make sure that it's from the fruit, what they call the fruiting body of the mushroom, because the mushroom is the stalk. Some cheaper brands will use the stalk, and that doesn't have a lot of these compounds, which are iricininones and these compounds that are good for your brain in them. The fruiting body does. That's more expensive. So the bottle will be maybe, for a good quality one, $25, $30. It doesn't have to break the bank. But yeah, you can get them in Whole Foods, online.
And this is like a natural supplement that you recommend?
I would say that if somebody is concerned about long-term brain maintenance and memory recall maintenance, then yes, it would not be a bad thing for many people to integrate into their diets.
And everyone should kind of be worried about with brain maintenance, right?
Yeah.
So,
with the stress we have nowadays, the pollution in the air, the pollution in our water, just the daily hassle of traffic and life, all this takes a toll on our brains. And you don't want to get Alzheimer's in your 60s. Now, maybe if you get in your 90s, maybe it doesn't matter. But maybe this can help push out and make your brain a little bit healthy a little bit longer.
Wow.
It's one factor though, right? It's just part of a holistic approach to your overall health.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a whole bunch of different aspects, and it's complex on how to make your mind sharper and practice habits and stuff like that. You mentioned off camera, it was similar to like an Adderall, or like it helps with
that,
or was it Lion's
that is another thing called alpha GPC. So Lion's Mane actually does help with focus, and there's been studies that show that individuals who take it score higher on tests, especially elderly people, for memory recall tests and things like that. But there's something called alpha GPC to touch on quickly, which they've used in Japan and India and the UK and Germany for years.
Yeah, that's something I've been trying to deal with, is just like maintaining my focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I think focus comes down to very deep subconscious areas. If somebody has trouble with focus, again, there's a multitude of factors. There's sleep, there's your social and personal relationships. There's maybe somebody does need, as an individual basis, psychotherapy is a good thing. A lot of times what I find is people have real trouble concentrating at all is because there's a little bit of chaos going on in your mind, and your mind is just saying like, hey, I don't want to sit down and stare at the screen for 2 hours and work. I've got all the stress, and it diverts our attention. But if somebody's just finding that it's really just a matter of locking into that zone, and maybe the caffeine's helping a little, but not so much, alpha GPC is got an Adderall-like effect, and I use that term very loosely. But the cool thing is it doesn't create that crash afterwards when it's used responsibly. Yeah, and you can get that over the counter too. These are just supplements that most people haven't heard of. So they go and they get Adderall from their friends. Sometimes I haven't prescribed to them, and if they want to do that, that's fine. But alpha GPC does the same thing, and it's probably way better for your body in general. Yeah.
So do you have like a holistic approach when it comes to medicine and stuff like that?
In what regards, you mean?
Like improving, maybe like these. I feel like we're all examples of natural substances that have benefits for the human body. Are there times would you recommend this over Adderall or even anything like that, for example?
I would say it would have to be on a case-by-case basis. If I always am a proponent and fan of using everything you can before you get to medicine. However, if you need the medicine, use the medicine, because it has its place, and I don't think it should be demonized. Sometimes it can be good in conjunction with Adderall if your medical provider agrees that it's safe for you. And some people might want to experiment and see for themselves, do I need the Adderall, or do I need more sleep and maybe a supplement to help me with that? But some people do need Adderall. It is a thing.
Yeah, because I mean, I was just curious, because some people are strictly like no Western medicine practices, nothing foreign in my body.
Right. I would say to those people that, again, that's the appeal to nature argument. I'd say to those people that if they don't want anything foreign in their body, they're going to have a really hard time taking really anything, because supplements, everything is a chemical. Supplements are chemical. Water is technically a chemical, right? And all of the pharmaceutical industry gets a bad rap. The good thing about pharmaceutical drugs is they're very well tested. Supplements, not always so much. So I think those people intend well, but I think there's a kind of underlying fear about putting anything unnatural into their body. A balance is always good. If somebody's a full-blown diabetic, for example, and they need insulin and they try to take supplements to address it, it's not going to work. They're going to have a lot of trouble. They might die. So in that case, they need injectable insulin.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things we can do on the more natural supplement diet side, lifestyle side, to keep us from needing to get there sometimes. Once you need medicine, unfortunately, your body's at a place where then you need it sometimes, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I got to try that, the brain fuel stuff, or what was it called again?
The alpha GPC.
Alpha GPC.
Alpha GPC, yeah.
GPC.
Yeah.
I could just order it on Amazon?
You can order it on Amazon, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Do you travel a lot?
Not in the last 5-6 months, but I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. I actually have a trip coming way out of the country to Asia soon. So I come between SoCal and NorCal a lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious on the differences, and because I've heard about ancient like Chinese medicine and, you know, like acupuncture and, you know, remedies like that. And I even was watching this podcast with Joe Rogan. He had this guy from the Amazon. He was like this nature explorer, and he was just basically saying like a lot of the stuff to help us is right there in the roots of trees and leaves and stuff like that. So
he's not wrong. I mean, you know, even if you get somebody on here with a PhD in pharmaceuticals or, you know, drug development, they'll tell you one of the reasons why they don't want the Amazon rainforest destroyed is because all of the compounds, the majority of the compounds that they take and turn to drugs, come from the leaves, come from the plants, come from the animals. We don't make anything ourselves. We take it, we derive it, and we make it safer so humans can have it. Even snake venom, for example, is used for some drugs. Do we get everything we need from nature? Can we get a lot of what we need from nature? Is that the best approach before you're ill? Yes. Can diet and natural things help with your health even when you're sick? In moderation, yes. But I would be careful with, you know, personally, I'm very careful and skeptical, I should say, with like Far Eastern medicine and things like that. There are parts of it which are very helpful. But the problem is back then, they couldn't really tell what was and wasn't effective. So it was a lot of he said, she said. It was, you know, have you ever heard of bloodletting?
yeah, I was like draining blood and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of doctors used to think, well, that, and some patients would survive, and they'd point to the 2 out of 10 that survived and be like, oh, well, so what about the ones that didn't? Herbs are kind of the same thing. Not all herbs are safe just because they're herbs. You know, like another really good example is St. John's wort. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's a supplement, and it is touted to be able to do a lot of things, but it's actually so powerful that in the UK, and I don't know if it still is, but it used to be available only by prescription.
Wow.
So some things that we can get over the counter here in other countries are like, whoa, just because that comes from a plant in the ground, that does not mean that it doesn't have some compounds that can really mess with you if you take them in the wrong way. So anybody who's going to supplement, I think, should be under the care of a medical provider or a clinical nutritionist, somebody who can direct them, because there's just so much info out there.
Yeah, like I was going to ask you, where can you get trustworthy information on stuff like this?
Yeah. I think it's always really important to look in someone's credentials. You know, they should be a clinical dietitian, a nutritional specialist of some sort. They should have, you know, the degrees, the licensure. As a rule of thumb, I can name 3 or 4 people right there. You know, obviously a medical doctor or DO. You know what a PA is, of course, a PA or an NP, a physician assistant or nurse practitioner, a registered clinical dietitian or nutritionist. And sometimes you have people who just have, you know, PhDs and masters in these areas. Generally speaking, though, and this is the caveat to that, don't rely on one person too much. Definitely communicate with your medical provider, but go online, look at the research. The research is key. And maybe take less opinion from, for example, your personal trainer on nutrition, and take more from, you know, somebody who's qualified in the field. There's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions, and I think everybody wants to do well, but without understanding the basis of biology, people unintentionally and accidentally mislead each other, and it can lead to harm when somebody takes that supplement for 4 years, for example.
No, man, I mean, I totally get it, and I feel like that's just like a big thing with our generation right now, or just people in general, like their lack of knowing how to properly do research.
Yeah, research is kind of a buzzword now, right? Like I've heard of people say, I did my research, and like it's, you know, this is not to call anybody out, but it's like they'll go on Instagram and look at the page of somebody. I recently came across a page of an individual who is young, and you know, when you're young, you can put your body through a lot of metabolic stress, and it'll just keep going. And this individual advocates for eating a stick of butter a day and an all red meat. A sticker, but they actually bite. It's cringy to me, and I don't use that word very often, but it really does make me cringe. A stick of butter, and they just bite it on camera, and they claim to eat half of stick to 1 stick a day, and so does their partner. And then they eat nothing but red meat, and you know, they don't eat. They refuse to eat vegetables. And the thing is, it's like, fine, there's people like this out there, but they have a huge following. Hundreds of thousands, I think, if not close, which means they're having an influence. They also say that you don't need to brush your teeth if you only eat red meat. So it's like, well, you know, now, yeah, it's just...
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But to somebody out there who's desperate enough to find out a way to, you know, lose weight, you know, if you eat only red meat, you probably will lose weight. But it's also because your body is kind of starving for nutrients and it's melting away. It's, you know, it's going into ketosis for way too long. So social media... Google, probably not the best place to get your research, unless you can look at, you know, things like Mayo Clinic or, you know, PubMed research articles. But if you don't want to do all the reading, just go to your doctor, go to a PA, go to a nutritional specialist and ask them.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the goal of having you on this pod too, was just like someone who's credible, someone who could share knowledge that's actually valid and research-based, like you said. So, I mean, I just appreciate you even coming on and taking the time to explain and share, because I'm sure it's frustrating for you as a professional to kind of see these people who are doing these trends and fads and having these influence. It's probably like pretty frustrating, I could imagine.
It's concerning, yeah, and you're not wrong. Like, it can be frustrating only because I don't want to see people doing things that are hard to reverse,
counterproductive.
Yeah,
like that.
or that they harm themselves with, and then they lose faith in nutrition altogether. It's like, well, this didn't work, that didn't work. Is nutrition even really going to help me? It's like, yeah, but there's a specific way to do it. And I appreciate being on this show because I think I reach a lot of people through you. And although I'm definitely not your typical guest on here, it's nice to be able to share some of these thoughts and put them out for people to process and use them how they will.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can really do, right? Is just put the information out there. And even if one person, watches this and hears this and kind of it kickstarted a change, that's the goal ultimately, right?
Yeah. I think people have influence on people, and people tend to underestimate how quickly they can influence their friends. You don't have to be a doctor or a nurse, a PA or a PhD to have this influence. I've seen tons of people who pick up a diet and their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their friends will do it too.
Yeah, I mean, because honestly, and for me too, it comes in waves, where I try to be consistent with the nutrition, meal prep, and then, habits in my life, or, just my daily routines change. I recently stopped working at an office, like a daytime job.
Right.
So I had a good ritual where I would just wake up, I'd meal prep for the day, had my yogurt, berries in the morning, and now I don't have that. So I'm in this state of finding that routine and habit again. Yeah, the balance again. So, I mean, I just recommend people not to be perfect, not to strive for like, okay, I gotta be like this. It's more about just being open-minded and aware of like your practices and habits, and if you're falling off, trying to stay back on, because it's easy to fall off.
It's very easy, and again, society does not create an optimal environment for us to get enough sleep, good nutrition, or anything. And even a person who's trying to do good and take a supplement, it's like, have fun Googling that and getting 20 different responses about what's good. So I think what I mean is, in that regard, people should try to be patient with themselves. It's a lot of information to sift through, even for me, even for somebody more qualified than me. It's something that's a process. And once you find something that works, first off, check with a healthcare provider to make sure it really works and it's not just what you think, because you don't want to find that out 2 years from now. And then try your best to integrate it into a habit. The brain builds habits amazingly well. It just takes a few weeks to a few months. But once it's in you, if you've ever gone to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, if you don't go, you start feeling strange. It's the same about eating well and sleeping well. It becomes as natural as remembering to brush your teeth at night.
Well, man, I mean, you guys heard it first. Practice healthy habits. Take it one day at a time. Get good research. Get good sleep. Eat your berries in the morning. Yeah. And broccoli is a real vegetable.
Broccoli is a real vegetable. And get enough protein, yeah.
Any closing statements before we wrap up the pod?
No, I appreciate your time on this, and it's always nice to come on here and be able to chat about these things with you. There's, like I said, it's been about a year. The world of nutrition and medicine is ever evolving. There's always things to talk about. And it's just really nice to be able to come after like this amount of time and just go through all of it and give it in a snapshot to people where now there's a chance for people to get ahead of this and think of it in that way.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try out those supplements you recommended and see if they work for me.
Yeah. Moderation is really key. Every supplement won't work for every person, and everybody doesn't need the same amount of caffeine or not, but there is too much. And just ultimately, be honest with yourself. If you're drinking 300 milligrams of caffeine a day, and it's probably because, we don't want to admit out loud, probably because I'm not sleeping enough, probably because I'm really stressed, then, if it happens once in a while, fine. But be honest with yourselves, be patient with yourselves, and give your bodies the chance to do what it can for you, because your body is one of those things that has amazing potential. And I'm not trying to sound, poetic when I say this, but the level of productivity our bodies can allow us to do, You know, these people are millionaires and billionaires. They know these things. They have the best personal trainers, the best nutritionists, and it's not a secret. It's just our bodies can do things that we can't even imagine, the amount of energy we can have, the cognitive focus we can have. You just have to give it the right fuel and do the right pattern long enough. And then your body will take care of you if you take care of it. I truly believe that.
Well, this conversation definitely got me motivated and has gotten me wanting to get back on that nutrition grind, because it definitely affects productivity, mood, all that.
Absolutely does.
So, man, be on the lookout for Trevor on his nutritional grind. You know, I got the hair back too.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
You like that?
I gotta see that.
Oh, no, man. Well, appreciate you stopping by. This has been, I can't even call it Free Smoke the podcast anymore because we've been demonetized. So it's not even called Free Smoke, but just an informational podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and we're out of here, man. Thank you so much for stopping by, for real.
Thank you for having me, Trevor.
All right, let's go. We're out of here.